Do you see, I mean, maybe this to Al, I mean, we think about, you obviously work with, a lot of different entities. Are you seeing, the need for that? When you think about the ESL, like that list basically says what qualifies, right? Are you seeing things, or have you heard institutions say, hey, I wish this was qualified because then I could help expand my wireless network, I could expand services I offer even more?
Absolutely. I mean, last year we built a number of community wireless broadband networks, and these projects were led by the school district, but typically they partner with the city, because when you build these infrastructures, they can support the community as well as the students, right? And there's a need for both. And how we configure those networks are, we will broadcast an SSID for the school district, and we will route that traffic back to the school district. So when the student goes home, they can open up their Chromebook or laptop or whatever the device is. It's broadcasting the same SSID in the community as it broadcasts at their school. So that way it automatically connects to that network SSID, that network name. And then it will route that traffic so that it authenticates with the existing school's infrastructure authentication services. So it goes through their firewall, through their filtering service. It gives them access to their applications as a secured connection. What's great about that type of approach is that it was a very easy lift for these school districts, because they already had core infrastructure like firewalls, filtering, all of those services sized out to support the number of clients, the number of students for the network. So it would use the existing internet services, but from a payment standpoint, they couldn't pay for it with E-rate funds, right? So it's somewhat of a burden in that you had to go through this calculation and apportion that out, right? Whereas if they were in the school doing those same things, they would have got their full money's worth for the internet services they were paying for. Now, in the community, because we could split it up like that, if there was also an SSID that would broadcast for public access, just like as it was in Wi-Fi access in City Hall, for example. And that traffic would go in a different direction. It would route in a different direction. It would route back to the city's firewall and internet services. So all the traffic flow was paid for in that manner. And that way it helped the two entities keep track of their budget and their spend for supporting the respective communities or constituents, right, throughout the community. So if E-rate and if the FCC were to make a change like that, I just think it would add tremendous benefit to the students as we move forward, knowing what can happen in a pandemic, but also to give more of that option of learning outside of the classroom. If in a lot of these communities, especially in those where we built the majority of these networks, these more of a digital divide type of service offering, if you will, they may not have a means to get to school on certain days. They may have to take care of a family member. There may be some other things that they have to manage in their day-to-day life, but it would still give them access to learning despite whatever challenges they have ahead of them. But I don't Jim, you say you don't see that coming. I hope you're wrong on that one, but you're definitely into it a lot more than I am. That's for sure.
I don't see E-rate having an off-campus modality, if you will. But there is good news, and the good news is that with the latest passage by Congress of the infrastructure bill, there is $65 billion for broadband in that bill. And there's a lot of grant money available that school districts could apply for if they so desire, to do just exactly what you're talking about, doing a CBRS or private LTE type of environment for off-campus access. And when they start to do that with their, in partnership with their local communities, even local first responders that gives them an advantage. You go to some of these places that are really, there's several moves afoot, okay? One is that they really need to understand what coverage actually is for broadband, both for cellular as well as terrestrial based. That broadband mapping is really off. It's off kilter right now, and so
Sure.
In front of Congress, the FCC chairwoman admitted that and said that they're trying to actively fix that, and there's been a lot of efforts to fix it. When you get 3 carriers and I'll say, hey, everything's hunky-dory, everybody has access, and then you go into the downtown core, which is the poorest section oftentimes, and you can't get 3G on your phone, there's a problem somewhere. And we've done some of those experiments with some of my clients, and they've gone, okay, we have a problem. These kids literally can't get internet access through a cellular connection that's good enough. And oh, by the way, when you try and go to the local carrier and try and get them to install a internet access broadband connection on land-based, they're going, no, because we don't have last mile there or whatever. And so really, it is a challenge that even in downtown core spaces sometimes where you have a problem like that. So I think that they're trying to address it, but I don't think it's going to be through you, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. And it is it is somewhat misleading on accessibility, right, in some of these areas. But one thing in the broadband mapping is it's all off, right? I mean, I know it's off because I can go with my phone in an area where I'm supposed to be covered and I have no connectivity. But on top of that, some of the things that we're finding, especially in these neighborhoods we're going into, even if there is the service, it's not an accessibility problem, it's an affordability problem.
Absolutely.
And that is something that's never talked about, right? And that's what's really exciting when we go into these communities, and it may be CBRS private LTE, but to be honest, we've had a lot of success, a tremendous amount of success with these large community Wi-Fi networks, like a mesh Wi-Fi solution.
Sure.
And part of the reasons for this success is the adaptability is so high to the offering, the adoption rates, because everyone has a Wi-Fi device.
Yep.
Right. So you don't have to hand out CPEs, you don't have to hand them advice. It broadcasts, they get on, they're like, wow, this is fantastic. I didn't even know I had connectivity. Now I'm, doing all this kind of stuff, and the amount of data consumption's amazing. I mean, so we at SmartWAVE, we try to fit the right solution into the right area based on the assets available and other certain things. But with respect to impacting these communities, just to be able to serve, some of these kids, you see them, even if they have to go outside their home for the connectivity, they have an option. They have some way to stay connected, right? So it's been pretty exciting. So anytime these schools or these cities get involved, we try to get the school district and the city or county to engage, because they're serving the same entity, if you will, right? And if you can bring that community uprising, I just think from a smart city play, right, you get a more educated community, you have an opportunity for more jobs, higher salaries, that leads to tax revenue, which is how a city operates, right? So I just think it's a good long-term investment. So we're excited about the infrastructure plan. But however we can augment that or supplement it with E-rate funding, it just helps that sustainability model as time goes on.